Round one NCAA tournament gets ready to roll tomorrow and Friday. Always a fun time of the year. We're talking college basketball here on Big Board Sports 104.5 a Team ESPN Radio, and always on the program here on a Wednesday. We bring on the Siena men's basketball head coach, Jimmy Patsos, busy this morning with recruits on campus, but takes time out to join us. And we also have on the line, Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst extraordinaire. Let's start with Coach Patsos. Good morning, Jimmy.
Hello, Roger. Hi, Chris. So happy to have Jay on here. That's big time.
Coach, man, you came back from California to this weather. What are you doing?
You know what? To be honest, it looks like a Robert Frost painting up here in Loudonville. I like the snow the first day or two. Now, after that, when it gets dirty. But, you know, it's one last shot. Spring's 5 days away. We're planting the flowers, and we're going to have them bloom in a little while.
Jimmy, quickly, what's your Final Four? Have you filled out your bracket?
No, let's go right to it. I got Virginia and Gonzaga, and I got Villanova and Kansas, and then I got Villanova and Gonzaga in the final. I have Gonzaga, in this year's bracket, I'm interested to see what Jay says. There's a lot of talented teams that might not be playing that good, and there are a lot of great teams that might not be that talented. I kind of think that Gonzaga has that. They're really talented, and they're really playing well.
Let's welcome Jay Bilas to our show, ESPN college basketball analyst, Big Board Sports 104.5 a Team, ESPN Radio in Albany. Jay, thanks for a few minutes with Coach Patsos. I'm Roger. We got Chris, the whole gang here. Thanks for a few minutes. Do you agree with Coach Patsos on his Final Four?
I always agree with Coach Patsos. I don't know. I don't know that anyone can come up with a Final Four that's going to be right in this thing. And the truth is, I'm not sure we could ever do it. And the funny thing about the NCAA tournament to me is, you know, the things that we've said this year are probably true about it being a wide open tournament, not knowing and all that stuff. But I think it's true every year. I think if we took 68 teams in any sport, did it, you know, if the NFL had 68 teams, or if we did it in any sport, we'd have basically the same results. And if you did it over the period of years we've done this, I mean, the first 64-team bracket was in 1985, and we'd have the ups and downs and the crazy results, and then the chalk that we've had in some years, and other years you get George Mason and then VCU. But overall, you know, you see sort of a balance where the big shots win 70% of the time, and then the really good little guys come through and pull some upsets. Because, I mean, you know, we've all been around a long time, sadly. I mean, we're all old men now. But I can tell you one thing, that the little guy that breaks through, kind of the smaller conference team, those guys are good. They're really good, but it's hard. I mean, it is really hard. Otherwise, it would happen a heck of a lot more. But, you know, let me give you my Final Four. Out of the West, I had Gonzaga like Jimmy. I think that's a really good call. The only caveat to that is I think Michigan is playing as well as anybody. And then I had out of the Midwest, which is the blue blood region because of all the national championship coaches, I have Michigan State coming out of there. Out of the East region, which I think is a really maybe the easiest of the regions. There's no region that's easy, but that's the easiest. I would say that's Villanova that will come out of there. And then out of the South, I had Virginia coming out of there. But the problem with that is DeAndre Hunter just got injured yesterday, so he broke his wrist, and he's going to be out for the tournament. And he was the sixth man of the year in the ACC, and he's the best athlete on that team. And so I'm going to stick with Virginia, not that I can change it because it's already written down in blood on my bracket. but Arizona is probably the team that would come out of there if not for Virginia.
Jay, in the Midwest, why Michigan State and not Duke, which just on the surface may be a more talented team?
Yeah, it's not the surface. That's a good call. I mean, Duke is way more talented, but they're also really young. And for some reason, you know, like Michigan State, I think is being undervalued in the tournament. They're 29-4, and I think it's their schedule that has everybody. You know, like they're a 3 seed, and actually the committee had them as a 4 not too long ago. But I think they should have been flirting with that 1 seed line. In fact, I thought they should have had the 1 seed instead of Xavier. Like, Xavier is very good, but if you look at their schedule, aside from a couple of games there, it was identical. Like, it's not like Xavier won that many more games against this quad 1 thing that the committee came up with. But Michigan State has a bunch of talent. They're too deep at just about every position. They shoot it very well. They shoot about 50% from the field as a team, and they're one of the top 3 or 4 defensive teams in the country, one of the top rebounding teams in the country. And I think with their depth, their size, their balance, the tournament is where Michigan State has always seemed to excel. The only problem is, as you say, they've got Duke in their way. But I think in the tournament, in a game that's a little bit more slowed down, we'll see Michigan State win that.
Coach Patsos.
Hey, Jay, is it me or every time I watch Michigan State play, they always make free throws at the end? Is that every time I see Michigan State play, they seem like they're making free throws? I think free throws are going to be big down the stretch. And by the way, Virginia, I saw them play Syracuse, and I can't believe they lost that guy because he was really valuable, and they only play 6 or 7 guys. So I agree with you there, but we're stuck with Virginia. But Michigan State, have they handled the distractions better than anybody and just kind of fought through it, Jay, in your opinion?
Yes, they have. Tom Izzo is, as we all know, is a great coach and as good a guy as you're ever going to meet. And the things they've gone through are not easy, but he's done a really good job in dealing with some difficult circumstances. And you're right, Jimmy. Like, the free throw line is going to be and is a big deal. Michigan State does make their free throws. They've got an excellent free throw shooting team. The issue I've always had with Michigan State, not just this year but in past years, is they don't get to the free throw line as often as I would like a good team to get there. They're more of a jump shooting team, but they do have at the end of games when they're leading and they have to make free throws when the other team's fouling for strategic purposes. They don't miss. They're very good. They're among a number of teams. Duke doesn't miss, and then although a couple of their players do. And I don't think Virginia does either. Like with Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy, those guys are all
they
nice
just show up.
Shooters.
Can you give us a little insight on Syracuse, Jay? There's a huge Syracuse contingency, and when they made their run, they started on Ollie. Tell me what you think about Syracuse getting in and what you think about them as a team.
Well, I'm okay with them getting in, although, especially if you look at the other teams that got in, you're saying, well, why not Syracuse? I mean, people seem to, because of what happened in the past, people seem to be banging on Syracuse and how they get in again, and, what kind of magic does Boeheim have with the committee? And then I point out all the times they got left out and say, well, he clearly doesn't have any magic with the committee. But I think Syracuse is good. They've just been inconsistent, and they're not a great shooting team. They've got youth across the board. So in different positions across their front line, they're a little bit young and inexperienced. Even some of the guys that have been there are a little bit inexperienced. But they're, in certain games, they are world beaters. And then other games, they play a little bit young and they make some mistakes, miss shots, things like that. But I'm a big fan of Tyus Battles. I think he's a really good player, and he's a pro. And O'Shea Brissett will be a pro. He's just a young player. And I think Frank Harlan's done a nice job this year. They've got, last time I saw them in person was at the ACC tournament. They played Wake Forest. And I was in the stands for that game before I had to start working the next night, or 2 nights later, excuse me. And I was impressed with how they played. I think they've got a very good opportunity to win tonight. I think it's going to be very difficult for Arizona State with very short prep to figure out how Syracuse plays and figure out that zone, and they're going to have to guard a lot of Syracuse's ball screens. That's not a strength of Arizona State's. I'll tell you what, if there's any team that could shoot Syracuse out of a zone, and Jim never comes out of it, but they could shoot them out of a zone, it's Arizona State. Those guys can really shoot it.
Yeah, Holder's really good, right, from 3-point range.
Trey Holder's really good from 3-point range. Shannon Evans, who actually played at Buffalo for Bobby Hurley and then came with them, he can really shoot and really score. They got a kid named Cody Justice that can really shoot it. Remy Martin comes off the bench and he can get into gaps and penetrate. And Bobby Hurley's played at Duke, and he's got a pretty good sense for how to deal with zones. It's more of a gap penetration. He came out of the sort of the school of gap penetration, which can be really debilitating for a zone. Make 2 play 1 and then pass it from there. But Arizona State's been scuffling the last probably half of the season, and so you never know how that's going to go. Teams like Arizona State and Oklahoma, they could continue to scuffle, or with all the pressure off them of having to make the tournament, they might just go back to the way they were playing early and just play free and easy and wind up playing their best. It's almost like you never know. Basketball could be like golf in that way. You could be hitting it lousy, and all of a sudden you're knocking it down the middle, wondering, how did this happen?
Time with Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst, Siena men's basketball head coach Jimmy Patsos. Hey, I know all fans get ready for tomorrow, get ready for Friday. You're looking for some upsets. There'll be some, right? A 13 will beat a 4, or maybe a 15 will beat a 2. There'll be something. Jay, do you have a couple of teams that you think are capable of pulling off some first-round upsets tomorrow and Friday?
I do, but let me give you a little caveat with that. I think now the tournament has become, for fans like us, trying to find the upset in your bracket. And sometimes when you start looking for it, you make a mistake, because upsets are supposed to be surprising. If we're picking them out, they're not really upsets. But there are a couple of games that I saw that I was like, geez, I wouldn't want to be the higher seed in that one. Clemson is playing New Mexico State in the Midwest region. That's the 5-12 game, which has traditionally been one of the upset games in the tournament. And New Mexico State's very good. They rebound really well. They got a kid named Jamario Jones, who's their best rebounder. And then they've got another kid named Zach Lofton, who I think this is his 5th college. He started out in junior college. Then he went to Illinois State. He wound up at Minnesota. He went to Texas Southern for a little while. Now he's at New Mexico State. So that's one I would look at because of their athleticism. I think Ohio State and South Dakota State is going to be a good game, and that's in the West. South Dakota State's got a kid named Mike Daum who averages 24, 23 points, about 10 rebounds, shoots it very well from the perimeter. I watched him a lot this summer at an Under Armour camp, and I was really impressed with him.
Hey, Jay,
go back to New Mexico State.
They're really good. And they have a kid named Jordan Sperber who's from here. He's a Villanova grad. He's one of the first really Moneyball guys in college. He worked at Nevada. He survived Musselman, and now he's in Mexico State. Besides, in other words, you think analytics are starting to come more into college the way they are here? See, I got college in Charleston winning based on analytics. I'm starting to use a little more analytics. What do you think about that in college, whereas they use it in the pros all the time? And can you use it in the tournament, or is it just too much based on pressure and ability to handle? In other words, I agree with you that some guys get really freed up, like Arizona State, but some guys get really tight in the pressure. What do you think about the analytics thing now going on?
I think the analytics are great if they help you sort of see deeper into something. Like I prefer to watch a team first and then get a feel for it, and then to kind of like when you're scouting, you're going to watch the team. Remember back in the days when you could go out on the road and scout a team.
My first assignment was Kansas, Oklahoma. I had no idea what I was doing. Billy Tubbs took me, but we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But now, so you go on feel. You have a different feel when you see them in person. Now you go on film. If the analytics helps you confirm something or gives you a different view that maybe opens up a different way of looking at a team, then I think it's great. I mean, I just don't. I think the over reliance on it that happens sometimes. Is a little bit of a concern. And then the other part of it is too much information. Like, you know this better than anybody, Jimmy. You're a great coach, and you've had a ton of experience with all this stuff. So you're asking me, but I know you already know the answer. But when you have a team, all teams are different and all players are different in the way they process information. And with some teams, you can give them a detailed scouting report, and then they go out on the floor and they're robots. They start thinking too much. And man, go back to the golf swing. Like when you're playing golf really well, you're not thinking about your grip or all these other things. You have a flow to it. When you start thinking about all the mechanics of it, then you become mechanical. And I think it's the same thing with that. I think it's really good for coaches to look at and say, okay, well, this guy is shooting a poor percentage from this spot, or this is where he's best. Let's take this away, or this is where they're the best. Let's try to limit this, things like that. But boy, you have too much inside the head of a player. Some guys can handle it, then other guys, they don't do as well with it.
It's funny. That's one of the reasons Villanova, they seem like, but Gonzaga seems like they play loose. And you and I have golfed with Mark Few, and that's how he golfs, as opposed to Gary Williams, who, all we're trying to do is make sure he keeps it in play and doesn't throw a club. You know what I'm saying? So, that's what I see. People are trying to look at a lot of numbers. I did the Yahoo show. And you know who doesn't care much about that? I watched this game last night, USC. Did anybody catch Bill Walton by chance for a few minutes last night? Because it was must-see TV.
I did. Bill is on a different planet. I don't know what planet it is, but the one thing that I like kind of laugh about more than anything. Like, I love Bill. He is the best. He's the best at his business, but the players now that know him, I know they love him, and they are, they have a great time with him. I don't think they have any idea how good of a player he was. I grew up in Los Angeles, and even knowing he's in the Hall of Fame, those guys didn't see, like, Bill Walton may very well have been the best college basketball player ever, and him and Lou Alcindor may have been the two best, and he was the first one that played at the highest level at both ends of the floor, and he was the most dominant center. Could run, he could do everything, and he got hurt later on, obviously. But what a treasure he's been in basketball, not just as a player, but the fact that his voice has been so prominent.
Jimmy and Jay, I was watching Notre Dame last night for a little bit, feeling bad for Bonzie Colson and Matt Farrell that they weren't playing in the NCAA tournament as two terrific seniors.
I agree. I did a lot of their games this year, and I try not to second guess the committee too much on these things, because these decisions are the hard ones. But it pained you a little bit to see 14 lost teams getting in, like Oklahoma, that were tanking, and then a team like Notre Dame that had 14 losses, but 9 of them were with their best players out. And if they had those guys, they would have been a top 10 team, and then he's back healthy. I think they should have gotten in, but reasonable minds can differ. There may be the sort of the thought process of, look, don't get hurt. I mean, Bill Parcells said you are what your record says you are. And so if they were thinking that, I'm not going to argue with it. But if they weren't, if Notre Dame was close, they should have been in.
Guys, appreciate a few minutes.
You guys should have your own show.
Yeah, you guys can. My wife just sent me a text. Is it those? Are you guys even there? Meaning me and Chris. You guys even here? No, it's Coach Patsos and Jay Bilas. We enjoy the listen. We're just taking a break.
No doubt.
Jimmy is never gonna. He's not gonna have his own show because he's got so many good young players right now. Siena's going to be really good next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And he's not going to be. You're not going to be able to get him on your show in the next few years. He's going to be such a big shot.
Hey, Jimmy, don't sell out on us, man.
Once he starts putting some wins together, he still better show up here on Big Board Sports on Wednesdays at 10:30.
I love you guys always. Hey, my sleepers, Houston, go Kelvin Sampson. I think they could be really good. Jay, who's like a 3, 4, 5 you think that could win it besides Gonzaga?
Wow, that's a good one. I think West Virginia could, even though they haven't shot it particularly well. I mean, Arizona's the best of those. I can't believe they're a 4 seed, but if you're looking for a 4 seed, they're the ones that can do it.
All right, well, see you guys.
All right, guys, thank you.
Brother. I'll see you in San Antonio. Bye.
See you, buddy.
Thank you, Jay. The only thing I may do, Jay, is since I have the ability to, and as Jay Bilas, Jimmy Pat says, I do have the ability to do a second bracket. The DeAndre Hunter injury to Virginia, even Bilas says, he's not going to change because he's already made his Virginia pick. He's going to stick with it, but it might be, for me, with a second bracket, I might go with Arizona. That's good stuff right there, right? Jimmy and Jay and doing their thing. And, yeah, we kind of kick back and let them go back and forth a little bit.